Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us. My name is Doug Sharpe, host of the National Leadership Briefing, and I have the pleasure today of having my good friend, Pastor Kevin Cavanaugh, with me. And he has agreed to sit down with me. He's been someone who I've enjoyed spending time with in the recent months and years, and or year that we've got to know each other. And I have questions for him. We are in a critical time in our nation, and we are very keenly interested in doing all we can to mobilize leaders and citizens from within the Church of Canada. And Pastor Kevin, can I just ask you some questions here today just to get started, because I need to know what's in your head. Is that possible?
Absolutely, Doug. I'm delighted to be with you, and let's go for it, friend.
Awesome. Thanks so much. First of all, is that obviously you and I have talked about this before, is that in these critical moments where there are opportunities for the church, for citizens from the faith community to exercise their influence in political processes, there is some that are resistant or hesitate to participate in those processes. Just to help us understand perhaps what might be in the minds of pastors or church leaders as to why they wouldn't want to participate.
Oh my, Doug, that's a huge question, and it could go on for a long time. It really could, but I'll try to be as brief as I can, and try to represent my colleagues as best that I can, because I love these guys. These pastors are so important and so critical. I think the bottom line is that most pastors see politics to be incredibly divisive, potentially divisive. And it can just be a place that they don't want to even open that door, because people are going to get upset and be challenged about, and start to fight with each other. And their commitment is to keep the peace and keep unity. And so it can be very, very tricky, but it's so important that we pastors, that we engage and that we do it as carefully as we can.
Yeah, no, that is, thank you for that. And I don't blame them. They're on very tricky ground anyway here in Canada these days, to add the complexity or the layering over of a political process into their world. I can see how it just gets that much more complex for them. Well, let me ask you a question. If we've been working on different strategies, obviously, here to help pastors that are in those circumstances, pastors who don't want their lives to get any more complicated. Let me just run this by you and ask you if you think this might be helpful. If we had an opportunity where we could help them clearly identify which of the candidates within political processes best represent their views and values. If we had a way of just providing them with information that they could share with their congregation that wasn't hyper political, that was focused on the things that are important to their church congregation, do you think that they might be interested in at least considering reviewing it? Information that would perhaps meet the same end, but keep them off of that hyper political, dangerous, divisive ground.
I think that that's essential. And I think that it would be very helpful. I think what we have to do, though, getting past that first step of actually helping them with a way to actually approach this, even initially, with their leadership. It's got to start with the leadership.
Right.
You don't bring it to the congregation.
Yeah, I agree.
If you don't have your leadership together on it. So pastor, you have to actually start the conversation with your core leadership team. If you have a staff, a multiple staff situation, you have to have the conversation with them as well. You have to bring them into it. You have to dialogue with them. You have to give them opportunity to think and to share, and to actually share even thoughts that might be difficult to deal with. But it has to be an open environment. But then, Doug, if we have, and I know we do, a process that would help them that isn't too narrow. So we're not just telling them it's these one or two things that so oftentimes we've had issues that if you're not supporting that issue, then we're out. Okay. And I think the process that you've worked to develop uh, expands it in an important way. It allows for more room, but it still keeps a very important guardrail or framework, if you would, in the four pillars I'm talking about,
Right.
which some might be aware of and some might not be aware of. But if you're not, that would be a good place to start. Okay.
Yeah, no, and that's the way the four pillars have been received. And what Pastor Kevin's referring to, for those who are watching the video, is that Pastor Kevin knows that it was in the fall of 2016 when we started surveying leaders in the church and people who were in senior positions, key influencers, and we were asking them what was really important to them first, because we can't obviously address all of the issues all the time, but we wanted to know what were their key priorities, and they came up with four things that were really quite revealing about what they wanted us to focus on and what they wanted help with in helping them to share and expand into society, culture, and into government. The four pillars are, really quickly, Pastor Kevin, for the folks that are on the call, that first of all, that parents have the right to raise their children the way they want. And so we help pastors to identify candidates within political processes who believe that it is the parent who should have the authority to raise the child, and without civil government interfering in that process. That is the ultimate responsibility of parents, and they want that to be preserved and protected. The second thing, or second pillar, is that the church, the people in the church that we talked to, wanted their right of belief and freedom of religion to be respected. So we offer the pastors different tools and techniques to help them to determine which candidates will respect and defend their right of belief and freedom of religion, so they can freely practice their religion and say what they need to say. Their free speech rights are protected. The third pillar is that the laws and policies that are passed by government officials must provide for the safety and security of the vulnerable people that live among us in our communities. That's a priority for them. Again, so we help them with that. And then we also heard from them that it was inappropriate for civil government to heap debt in the way of, just taking on structural debt and burying our kids in long-term extended debt with excessive taxation. So we help the pastors talk and advance those ideas, and to find out who the candidates are that when presented with an opportunity to vote, who that at least share their views and values in those areas. Do those sound like, again, those four pillars? We've talked about this before, but how appealing would that be to the people that your colleagues?
I think those that are understanding how critically important it is to get involved in the political process in the nation, and what an impact government is having, not only on shaping the culture, but shaping the laws that shape the culture. I think to those men and women in ministry who are understanding how critical that is, those four pillars are very appealing and very helpful, because it allows us to unite a far greater group without a lot of conflict or division. I mean, these are things that our hearts would resonate with. Who wouldn't be on board with that? Right. But even within those four pillars, the four pillars are addressing other issues that are important to us as well, right? Absolutely. So I think they're fabulous. I'm so grateful for them.
Well, we're using those four pillars. Thank you, Pastor Kevin. We're using those four pillars right now to determine who is the best candidate for leader of the Conservative Party of Canada. And the reason why we're focused on that is because that leader who is going to be elected to lead that party could quite possibly become the next Prime Minister of Canada. But here's the situation. We have until May 15th to actually have a membership in that party, to receive a ballot so that we can vote our values. So we can actually say and review the choices. There's four candidates. Some are better than others in the way of who represents our views and values in these four areas of the four pillars. And if we do not have a membership by May 15th, then we will not receive a ballot and will not be able to vote. And if we don't have a membership, someone else is going to go buy a membership that perhaps thinks differently about the importance of you raising your children the way you want, or the importance of your right of belief. So we're using those 4 pillars right now, Pastor Kevin. Perhaps you could share that news with your colleagues, and so we can get as many people as we can influencing the outcome of that election with regard to these 4 pillars.
Absolutely. And you know, I would make the point as well, Doug. I would say to you, I'm embarrassed to have to admit this, but I would say to you that certainly no more than 2 years ago, I didn't even realize personally that you needed to buy a membership in order to have influence on who that leader would be. Okay, I was unaware that that's how this process worked. And that's why it's so essential that before May 15th, that those who are wanting to have a candidate that they can vote for with clean and clear conscience and conviction and feel right and good about it, get active immediately.
Yes.
And encourage others to get active.
Awesome.
So, you know, boy, we just encourage you to go to conservative.ca and to purchase a $15 membership and to encourage as many others as you can to do the same.
Excellent. Thank you, Pastor Kevin. That is the best advice I've heard all day. That's great. Okay, I appreciate your time today, Pastor Kevin. We're going to wrap it up there, but I look forward to seeing you on the road ahead because I like hanging out with you. Talk to you soon.
Me too. God bless you, friend.
Thank you.